The late great preacher Fred Craddock returned to his home church in West Tennessee after having not been there for years, and he went to worship with a friend of his, and there were just a handful of people in attendance. And he noticed that the church had these new, beautiful, expensive stained glass windows, and he couldn't help but think, how could they possibly afford these windows? So he turned to his friend and he said, are these windows given by the names that I see here that I don't recognize? And sure enough, each window had a plaque with a name he didn't know. He said, are these people that came after I left the area? And his friend said, no. Turns out there was a church in St. Louis that had ordered these windows from Italy, and when they arrived, they discovered they didn't fit. And so they decided to custom make some new ones and sell these windows to the first taker, and this church was able to buy these glorious windows at a very reduced price and install them. Craddock responded, well, they are so beautiful, but what are you going to do about all those plaques? His friend said, well, the board of elders discussed it, and we decided to leave the names up here because it's good for us as a little church to realize there are some other Christians out there. It is good to realize there are some other Christians out there. It's good to realize that there have been Christians before us and there will be Christians after us. And today on All Saints' Day, I want to invite us to recognize that there are some people here that we can't see with our own eyes. That's the mystery of the communion of the saints. For we are, to quote our text for today, surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. The author here is attempting to motivate the discouraged and weary people of faith. Do you ever feel discouraged in your faith? Do you ever feel weary about doing the right thing? The author wanted to remind them that they're not alone, that this has been the process that the people of faith who have gone through for ages. And he gave them this image of like spectators in a sports stadium. Think Penn State, Ohio State college football. That's the image here that we're being invited to trust. And these are passionate spectators because they understand what it's like to run the race, and they know that it's not an individual foot race, but rather a relay race. And each of us is passed a baton by those who've come before us, and we will pass that same baton on. And this crowd knows how difficult it is to persevere with faith. And they are urging us to look to Jesus, who is the pioneer and the perfecter of faith. So a few things to lift up in this text today. Notice that the author uses cloud singular, not clouds plural. For while there are many people, many saints who are part of this cloud, they are unified with one voice, with one message. And they're working together towards that one purpose, urging us on to that same unity, holding, praying, pleading for us to do our part in the race of faith. But it goes even deeper than that, because the word witness comes from the Greek martis, and it has two different meanings. The first is to testify or attest to, or to confirm or affirm that which has been taught or passed on. So these are not just people who talk the talk. These are people who walk the walk, who understand and testify to the truth that Jesus came to share. They are tried and true. They are tested in their faith, tested by the challenges of faith. And second, that word martis and martyr are linked. These are people who not only persevered because life is hard and faith is challenging, but they have willingly suffered because of their faith. When was the last time you willingly suffered because your faith taught you to do something that the crowd would not have supported? These people who are part of the cloud understand the power of suffering, but they also understand there's a power greater than suffering, and they give testimony to that. So consider what's going on in your life today. Maybe you're discouraged. Maybe you're weary. Maybe you're worn down. Maybe you're wondering, should I do the right thing here? As you continue to run your portion of the relay race, remember that you're not alone. It may feel that way, but you're not. You are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, and they are cheering you on with one voice, with one hope. I recently read the writings of the late poet, songwriter Leonard Cohen, who shared the impact that a teacher, Paul Weinfield, had on his life. Weinfield suggested that the great problem of modern life is that we've misunderstood the hero's journey. You know the hero's journey, that's that classic storyline. Joe Campbell wrote about that, where you have a protagonist who goes out and embarks on an adventure. Think Luke Skywalker, think Frodo Baggins, think Harry Potter, Odysseus, or Simba. They go out and they face these challenges, and they overcome these challenges and return home transformed by the encounter. He argues that today, everyone from CEOs to wellness influencers talk about the hero's journey. They talk about becoming the hero of your own story. And it sounds all well and good. But so much of it seems to suggest that the journey is really about facing our fears, slaying the dragon, and gaining 25,000 Instagram followers. But that's not the hero's journey. In the hero's journey, we don't slay the dragon. The dragon slays us. In the hero's journey, we are the ones who are slayed. When we find ourselves unable to make the marriage work, or when we find ourselves unable to cope with the loss of our spouse, unable to find work that aligns with our gifts, or find work at all. Or when we find ourselves unable to conquer our addiction through sheer force, unable to find peace in the midst of the anxiety of our lives, unable to find comfort in our depression. Or when we're unable to inspire our children to live a life of faith, or unable to have a meaningful relationship with our adult parents or our grandchildren. We don't slay the dragon. The dragon slays us, and we all fail, and we all fall. And we're all experiencing that brokenness in some way. And what happens to too many of us is we abort the life of faith when we hit a hard patch. We say God can't possibly care. And that's where we're mistaken. Weinfield says, if you're wise, you will let yourself be shattered and return to the village humbled by your experience, but with a newfound sense that you don't have to identify with that part of you that always needs to win and always needs to be recognized and always needs to be famous and well known and needs 25,000 Instagram followers. For the hero's journey is not so much about winning and losing. It's about learning. It's about learning courage. It's about learning wisdom. It's about learning hope and resilience. And learning to be humble. For as Weinfield writes, life is not out to get you, nor are your struggles your fault. And every defeat is just an angel tugging on your sleeve, telling you that you don't have to keep banging your head against that same wall. So leave the striver there, trapped in his or her lonely ambition, and walk away and allow the vastness of life, the fullness of life, the goodness of life to embrace you in your brokenness. Richard Rohr likes to say that in the first half of life, we fight the devil. And we have the illusion and the inflation of winning every now and then. But in the second half of life, we always lose because we are invariably fighting God. And God will not lose to us. So today on All Saints' Day, we remember that we're not alone. We are not alone. And this is not our race to run all by ourselves. It's a relay race, which began long before us and will continue long after we're gone. And we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. And you know what? If they didn't understand then, they understand now. They have seen, and so they know. And they can be unified in purpose because all the nonsense has been revealed to be what it is: nonsense. Our job is not to slay the dragons, but to trust that when the dragons slay us, our life has begun. Hallelujah. The sooner, the better. And this cloud of witnesses, they're cheering us on, urging us not to look at them. No, look to Jesus. See him. See what he was willing to endure. See the shame that he was willing to endure. This was not a good PR campaign that Jesus underwent. He didn't gain a lot of Instagram followers, but he endured suffering. He persevered, and he endured the shame. And we can do the same. We can allow suffering to transform us into more humble, loving, wise, resilient human beings. And like Jesus, we can choose courage over fear. We can choose wisdom over foolishness. We can choose resilience over despair. That's the hero's journey. And these are the lessons we're here to learn. What other lessons are there? What other lessons are there to learn? These are the lessons that our ancestors needed to learn. And these are the only lessons we need to learn. And you know what? God will give us all of eternity to learn them. For God is infinitely patient with each of us. And the saints understand now what they probably didn't understand then. And they're cheering us on with one voice. In The Stone for a Pillow, Madeleine L'Engle tells this story about a good man who goes to heaven after he's died, and he's welcomed at the pearly gates, which are thrown open for him to enter. And he enters in a daze of bliss. It's everything that he'd ever hoped it would be. It's golden streets, milk and alabaster and honey and golden harps. And he wanders the streets lost in happiness until he realizes he's all alone. He hasn't seen anybody in his whole time in heaven. He walks and he walks. There's nobody there. So he goes back to the pearly gates. He asks Peter, is this really heaven or am I somewhere else? And Peter says, oh no, it's heaven. Don't you like it? And he said, oh, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. But where is everybody? Where are the saints? Where are the prophets? Where are the Holy Family? And Peter looks at him with compassion. He says, oh, them. They're not here. They're in hell. They're ministering to the damned. I can show you the way if you want to go there with them. Does it ever feel like we're living a hell on earth? Sometimes it feels that way. But here's the thing. We're not alone. We never have been, and we never will be. We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Don't you hear them? They're cheering you on with one voice. They're urging you to look at the crucified one who is the risen one. They're inviting you to trust that your suffering does not have to have the final word. That it is the occasion for the opening into grace. They believe in the power of love. They weren't perfect when they were here, but they get it now. Do you hear them? Are you ready to listen? Amen.